Take your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
Thor, I don't often do this, but I'm going to start today's show with a little bit of sourcing. After some crack investigative work, working through my sources, a few text messages, even looking at travel plans, I can confirm the Gophers defense did make it off the field at Wrigley, and they did find their way to the airplane back to the University of Minnesota.
Barely, but they got there.
And Minneapolis. They did indeed. And they're going to need to be markedly better this Saturday when the Gophers take on the Wisconsin Badgers. Thor, I'll tee it up to you this way. I told Manny on Sunday, I can see a loss coming from 275 miles away. That is the distance from Camp Randall to Huntington Bank Stadium. And some of it might just be fear-based. It might not even be logic-based, which is why I'm glad that you are here. But recency bias, you have a Gophers defense who couldn't stop you, me, and the rest of the Score North crew. I think they've literally in the last, I guess Dante Moore had 3 incompletions in the entire game, and our guy Preston Stone didn't have 1 incompletion in the second half of his game. So that terrifies me. Logic of being a Gopher fan terrifies me. Everybody thought this game would be so easy. In my best Lee Corso, not so fast. Here come the Badgers, who have won 2 out of 3. I wouldn't say it is the full air raid offense that Luke Fickell wants it to be, but Thor, it's starting to look mildly functional, and they've played really good defense all year. So to say that I am terrified of losing to the Badgers on Saturday is an understatement. Talk me and any other Gophers fans who are feeling the same way off of the ledge, because I'm ready to jump.
Yeah, the way that I feel about this is the loss that I seen coming was that Northwestern one, which is why I made the point of like, this isn't the must win. The Wisconsin one is. You have to beat Wisconsin here. You just simply do. You're sitting at 6-5. Preseason win total was 6.5. I've made the argument you win this Wisconsin game, it is more or less a successful regular season. I know it's not a bonanza of one. I mean, you're never going to say, 7-5, there are records that you would prefer for sure. But in lieu of the circumstance with where the roster was, I think that's totally acceptable. You get upset at home, this dead end Wisconsin team in the last game of the season, we just lost to Northwestern. That's where I think the grumbling will be justified. I also think these are in this one here, it's a crucial game, not just for those reasons, but I also think there's a very real value to winning that one and then the bowl game in terms of making your argument to guys on the roster, the key roster pieces to return. In college football now, with your perpetual yearly offseason free agency where everyone's a free agent until that loophole gets closed, and it will when people get annoyed enough by it, where all of a sudden then the student athletes they'll become unionized and they'll become the employees of the university. That's where you can start to sign them to contracts. But up until then, there is no time limit on these things. And so because of that, Coy Parrish, Drake Lindsay to a lesser extent, and then you have Anthony Smith and you have Darius Taylor with the NFL, and a couple other guys like that, trying to convince those guys to come back. And NIL certainly will be important and the money that you can put up, but you need to hopefully finish with 8 wins to bolster your argument. There's a couple guys in there looking for their last season where it's like, we want an opportunity to compete for a college football playoff berth and potentially, get for a bigger stage for their NFL evaluation. It would be really nice to finish this season with 2 wins again, to go into the offseason and bolster your argument to those guys when you sit down with them and try to convince them to come back to campus for one more year.
In fairness, Thor, though, for a lot of those guys, hasn't that decision already been made or will be made after the Wisconsin game? Most guys aren't going to stick around through the bowl game, especially when you're looking at something. I had this for later in the show, but win or lose against Wisconsin, you're more than likely looking at the Rate Bowl on December 26th or the Pinstripe Bowl on December 27th. I'm not sure guys are going to stick around, play the bowl game, and then decide. So I think a lot of that, to me, Thor, goes back to the buzzword that PJ loves to use, or buzzwords, the cultural sustainability. And has he created a program where when you look at the transfer portal the last handful of years under PJ, they have absolutely lost players, but comparatively, they've lost less players. So I think this year will be a good test for that, whether they finish 6-6 and 7-5. How is everybody feeling about the head coach? And specifically, Thor, I'm going to be looking at the defensive side of the ball and the decision that may or may not be made on Sunday morning about the future of Danny Collins. I told Manny on Sunday, and I think Manny agrees with me, I'd be surprised if Danny Collins is not the defensive coordinator next year. I wouldn't be shocked if he isn't, but I would be surprised if he isn't, just because he's been with PJ for a decade and a half, and I don't think PJ wants to pull the plug after 1 year. But I'll be interested to see what does the defensive side of the ball look. And in all honesty, Thor, it's going to be within hours of the Wisconsin game. We'll start learning about players that are perhaps opting out of bowl games or maybe going different places. So I think the game specifically, Thor, and then after the game, the thing to keep the biggest eye on or pay the most attention to me is the defensive side of the ball. You can never say for certain in today's day and age, but I'm reasonably confident that if PJ Fleck is back, and I think the Northwestern loss made it more likely than not that PJ Fleck is back, especially if they lose to Wisconsin, I'm fairly convinced that Drake Lindsay is back. Money does play a role, but he also comes from a family with money. Could he be wowed by a better situation and more money? Absolutely, but I'm far more intrigued by what happens with the defense on Saturday afternoon, and then what happens with the defense on Sunday and into the following week. Because I told this to Manny, again, I don't know, Thor, you probably would know better than I would. I'm having a really tough time telling if it's schematics or personnel. People who know this smarter than I do on the defensive side of the ball seems pretty split. Oh, they don't quite have the personnel. Oh, the schematics are bad. You look at some of the still frames of that Northwestern game on Saturday, Thor, and I don't care who your personnel is. If you're not within 5 yards of a receiver, you're not stopping anybody. So I just think the problems right now are pretty much all on the defensive side of the ball, aside from the offensive line still can't run block. But I feel reasonably confident the team can sling the ball around the yard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and for me, to your question about the defense, I think that there's just holes in that lineup, right, that are hard to work around, linebacker and cornerback in particular. In the same way with offense, part of that offensive line has been problematic all season. Next year is when you're hoping, if you can convince your key players to come back, and then you have a strong portal process where you can get you're going to get outgunned on the top guys for sure. But if you can identify the second, third tier guys and steal some plug and play starters at some of your holes, that's where I think this roster could get really, really interesting. But yeah, to your point about the defense, linebacker room coming in, the cornerback room coming in, they were your question marks, and they really haven't done anything to assuage those concerns.
And I still feel, I will say this, I can't quite explain why they haven't been great in the run game defensively. I think a lot of that, to your point, Thor, falls on the linebackers. For
second level tackling. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't think the defensive line is doing enough to plug up holes initially, but I still don't feel like they're the bulk of the problem. They do get pretty good pressure on the quarterback. You and I both believe that Kerry Brown and Coy Parrish are good safeties, so assuming you can get some form of that defensive line and that Kerry Brown and Coy Parrish are back, who knows about Coy? Again, I'm pretty sure he'll be back, but I guess we'll have to wait and see there. Wisconsin,
and if he wants to try to leave Ross, we'll just send a kicker after him to hopefully chase him down from behind. Sorry.
You can't get caught. You can't get caught by the kicker. Earlier this year, Isaiah Rodgers got caught by the Lions kicker. What is with guys who should be so much faster than kickers in this town?
What is it with being a Minnesota football fan?
Well,
it's just a perpetual, yeah.
fair point.
Life is pain, Ross.
You know, I will say this to your point, Thor. If the Gophers win on Saturday, and I'm willing to let you continue to talk me into that they will, I think it's going to be a close game. I've thought all along it would be closer than people thought. I'm willing to be wrong, and at the end of the day, the Gophers win 31-10, and I go, boy, that's great. The big thing here as to why I really want the team to win this game, I'll be honest. If the Badgers win, they're 5-7. If you lose, you're 6-6. Okay. The only real difference in the season is that one is going to a third-tier bowl and the other isn't. The programs over the last handful of years, the last 5 years, have been pretty similar. The Gophers, I believe, have been better, but they've been pretty similar. But I still do think for Gopher fans and for this region of Minnesota fans, winning the Axe 4 out of 5 years certainly means something.
Yeah.
And again, a 7-5 regular season record sounds a lot better than 6-6 for everything you stated early on, Thor. Still an opportunity with a bowl victory to get to 8 wins. Well, if you finish 6-6, you can win that bowl game, go 7-6, or you can very easily lose it and have a losing record. So I think it's important, to your point, for optics, but I think just beating your chief rival 4 out of 5 times in a season, Thor, where your second rival to most, maybe it's number 1 to a lot, absolutely took you to the woodshed by 38 points. And then a few weeks later, you follow it up. I don't want to say it's a catastrophic loss. It was not. We've seen far worse losses as Gopher football fans than that. But to have plenty of opportunities to win a football game, borderline be gifted a touchdown, have a kick return almost for a touchdown, and still find a way to lose a game, that's tough. And oh, by the way, Thor, we've made it 13 minutes, and I haven't even got into the Brady Denneberg disaster that I'd been talking about all year that you absolutely knew was going to happen. And I don't want to hang that poor kid out to dry. But, Thor, you want to talk about 2 absolutely non-competitive kicks that were both makeable. I don't want that kid. It's going to be in the mid to upper 20s on Saturday, maybe some elements. PJ, 4th and 1, 4th and 2, inside the 40. Unless you really need the 3, go for it. I don't trust that kid to make anything beyond an extra point, and I hold my breath on those.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the Gophers, a team that have had all the close games this year, and it looks like we could get another one this weekend against Wisconsin. It's troubling for sure going into that game. So hopefully Denneberg shows up locked in and ready to go. But yeah, as for Wisconsin, Wisconsin now has won 2 of the last 3 games after they just had that nightmare start to the season. They beat 2 G5 teams to start out the season, and then after that they lost. Was it 6 straight games? But yeah, since then, and you got to give them credit. This is coming out of a bye. They had a bye in early November. Coming out of that, they upset Washington at home 13-10. Then they get annihilated by Indiana. Everybody does. But then last week you beat Illinois, upset them 27-10. Wisconsin's still giving good effort. They don't have any semblance of a passing game, but they're keeping the ball on the ground. They're running the ball okay. The offensive line looks like it's improved. And then the defense is still giving really, really good effort. You thought maybe they were going to quit on Fickle, and it looks like the team, especially after the administration announced he was coming back, my impression was that roster didn't like Fickle much, but they've certainly responded since that announcement. But yeah, if you're the Gophers, you can't make any mistakes against Wisconsin, because Wisconsin, their Achilles heel, and it's way worse than that. They don't even have an Achilles heel. Their offense is horrible, and they can't throw the ball at all. It's been a revolving door at quarterback, and then it's this paint dry type offense that's going to be pretty easy for the Gophers to decipher. I've made no secret about the fact that I don't respect Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, who I think calls plays with finger paintings. That stuff, that's why it's incumbent for the Gophers. You must take care of the ball. Hopefully the Gophers offense, and the way to attack Wisconsin, it's through the air, which I think the Gophers are going to be perfectly happy leaning that way. Wisconsin's run defense is the thing that has shown to be frisky this year. But if you can put the ball in the air and you can be accurate, you can move the ball on Wisconsin. You can get chunk yardage against Wisconsin. This is a big game for Drake Lindsay, and this is a matchup that sets up well for him. And if the Gopher passing game gets going, Wisconsin does not have the offense to come back. So that is sort of your path here, and potentially PJ Fleck texted me right now. Stop giving away the game plan. That's what you got to take care of the ball, but have success through the air. And you've already dragged Wisconsin out into deep waters because of the state of their offense. Of course, you start turning the ball over early, or you have special teams miscues like happen across the town to the professional football team in town there. That's where the Gophers, it could start going the other way.
With the holiday, we're dropping this on the evening of Tuesday, and one thing we don't quite know yet, Thor, is what the elements look like. Could that be a great neutralizer? Could be some rain, could be some snow, could be some wind. So I worry about what that could do for the Gopher passing game. But jokingly, Thor, I've said on this pod and even on the X Machine, good for me, at the Ross Brendel, the Gophers might need the elements to slow down the vaunted Wisconsin offense, because you tell me everything that Wisconsin can't do on offense, and I can come back and I can tell you, okay, well, the Gophers can't stop the run. They can't tackle. And Thor, I don't care if it's been eons since they've had a kid throw for 200 yards in a game. At this point, do you trust this defense to let the Wisconsin offense look like the Wisconsin offense should look like? Because I'll be honest, I sure as bleep don't, and I hate to keep belaboring that, but what we saw last Saturday, and I hope the coach uses this as bulletin board material, what we saw last Saturday was offensive to college football. I mean, it was offensive to football in general. That was awful.
Yeah.
You can't let Preston Stone not have an incomplete pass the second half of a game. Not one airmail, not one tip pass, not one forced pass because he was being rushed. I'm just, again, I hate to be negative Nancy, and please rip me in the comments if you want, but I borderline sit here today feeling like Wisconsin should be the favorite and not Minnesota because they're playing better.
Yeah, I think the line's fair. Honestly, well, for me, I'm probably gonna be betting the Gophers, and maybe this is famous last words with that thing under 3. But to your point, Ross, if I'm gonna go the other way on this, that if you're a Minnesota fan, the thing that concerns you, it's exactly what you're talking about. It's that lack of tackling against this Wisconsin offense. That even though it's straightforward, it's that vanilla thing I was talking about before, that Wisconsin runs at the 135th adjusted offensive pace in the country. In other words, they're the second slowest moving off. It's like that is the way that the service academies play, except the service academies now they spread you out and they do the triple option in space. They do interesting things on the ground, whereas Wisconsin, it's the pro style, 3 yards in a cloud of dust thing. But if Wisconsin is able to break tackles and they are in some ways I don't know if I want to say dictating the line of scrimmage, because the Gophers defensive line is good, but the Gopher defensive line also, to your point earlier, Ross, perhaps in this game you want to keep a little bit better gap integrity to try to protect and or help out your linebacker core a little bit more. But those second level guys, they have to make tackles on their own. When the ball gets out to the perimeter, the cornerbacks have to make tackles, right? And the safeties have been up and down in run defense. I think in our minds, we can all remember Coy Parrish coming up and absolutely blasting someone and doing a run fit from the outfield grass. I think we can also remember times where he took a bad angle or he missed the tackle coming downhill. And so like that stuff's going to have to be there. If the Gophers can slow the Wisconsin run game at all, you got them. You already have them. So to me, the Gophers have numerous paths here, but there are paths for Wisconsin that need to be harped on in practice all week if you're the Gophers. And then, of course, in the hours leading up to that game.
Thor, do you care to guess, for whatever it's worth, what the ESPN matchup predictor thinks of the game?
Oh, I'm going to say 52% for the Ghosts.
51.2% Wisconsin, 48%
get out of here.
8% Minnesota.
Wow.
However, Minnesota's still 2.5-point favorites, which again does kind of show you what Vegas thinks of this game, because even in college, they love, when all things being equal, to give the home team a field goal. Well, the Gophers aren't even getting a field goal. So we'll see. That ends the doom and gloom portion of the pod, Thor. I want to continue to talk about Drake Lindsey. Yes, he could be bad this Saturday. Any quarterback can be bad on any given Saturday. But by and large, the season he's put together this year has been very good. And even in a losing effort, he could not have looked more in control and more comfortable against Northwestern. And by the way, I'm not saying this is a Georgia national championship defense good, but that's a pretty good Northwestern defense that's physical, does some things well. And for him to stand into the pocket, make some good deep throws. How about our guy Malachi Coleman getting his once every 4-game catch? And I expect him to hopefully get another big one against the Badgers. I think Drake Lindsey, win or lose on Saturday at the end of the year, assuming he's back next year, you have to feel pretty good about the quarterback at the helm for the University of Minnesota. I think over the moon's probably too much, but this has been better than I would have expected in year one. Yes, there's been growing pains. There's been games where he looks lost and uncomfortable and just not quite in the rhythm. But we've talked about this week in and week out, Thor, for the most part. When he is told we are losing by 3 or 6, or we need to put this game away right now on this drive, by and large, he has been able to do that. And I just think he's been awfully impressive for most of the season.
I would agree with that. I think that Drake Lindsey is an NFL talent. I believe that Drake Lindsey will ultimately get drafted whenever he ends up coming out. I think he's going to be a star in the NFL? No, but I see some people will toss out Ryan Mallett because of the Arkansas connection. I think a fair one is like a Zach Mettenberger. Kind of like I think Drake Lindsey's ultimately going to get taken in day 3, and then we'll see what happens. But he of course has a pro caliber frame coming out of the box, and he has pro caliber throwing chops as well. And I have to give it to Drake Lindsey. He really impressed me this year with the pocket presence and the ability to go through some of those progressions for where he is in his development, the age that he is, his first year as a starter. Was it perfect? No. And obviously the Gophers were non-competitive, and in particular, the 2 games that we expected them not to be competitive in, and Ohio State and Oregon, of course. And, everything wasn't clean, but overall, the overall body of work I thought was pretty impressive for Drake Lindsey as a first-year starter. I am hoping that the Gophers are able to convince a lot of their key pieces to come back in addition to Drake Lindsey. And I agree with you, Ross. I would expect Drake Lindsey to return to the Gophers for his 3rd season coming up here. But if you can add weapons as well, Darius, I'm sort of assuming Darius is going to the NFL, but we'll see. He does have an option there. And then, what do you get out of your pass catching core? And if you can convince Coy to come back, last season, you spent a lot of time trying to turn him into a two-way guy and then potentially use him in the slot. That experiment, kind of fizzled. Would you try it again to make a run? Can you try to turn him into a part-time receiver? Do you want to try to do that? But yeah, to your point, Ross, I'm excited about Drake Lindsey's future as well. Hope the Gophers can keep him around. It already is a feather in the Gophers coaching staff cap, both the identification of this prospect, finding Drake Lindsey after he had strangely fallen through the cracks in recruiting to only be a 3-star that was overlooked even by his local school in Fayetteville in Arkansas. Then also the development of Drake Lindsey to this point. But if you can also keep him up until the point when he leaves for the NFL, and he is indeed an NFL draft pick, another feather in the cap for your scouting and development.
Surface level stats for Drake Lindsey: 15 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions, also over 2,000 yards passing in some of those games. To your point, Thor, they were going to have an incredibly difficult time passing when you talk about 2 of the best defenses in the country, with Ohio State and Oregon, and even Iowa, who still plays really good defense. So,
and Ross, to toss one thing in there, the Gophers run a true blue pro style offense. I think it was Quincy Avery said that of all the college system, he's a private quarterback coach for anyone that doesn't know Quincy Avery, but he said of all the college offenses that he is intimately familiar with the details, that the Gophers are the most NFL-esque offense. And of course, you saw Max Brosmer come out of there, and now Max Brosmer, his success and his continued mentorship of Drake Lindsey. I mean, they show him every Gopher home game. It seems like almost all of them, Max Brosmer is on the sideline and he's talking to Drake Lindsey when he comes over. That stuff is only going to help Drake Lindsey as well during his pre-draft process going to the NFL.
The Gopher fan in me says I want Darius Taylor back because when he plays, the Gophers are better without him. as an advisor, I would say, Darius, you absolutely have to go to the NFL. There's already a lot of there's already a lot of tread on those tires. You have an injury history. Even if you come back and have a great season next year, I'm not sure what the advantage is as far as being draftable. Maybe you work your way up another round in the draft, maybe, but then you're a year older. So I guess I'd like your opinion. I would tell him he should go, but what are your thoughts on that?
I would probably be in that same boat as well. Yeah. Darius, he's been nicked up in his career as well. We don't know what his medicals are going to be, but I do feel like my handle on his measurables, he's not going to test as an elite athlete. Darius also hasn't played a lot of special teams, which is going to hurt him during the pre-draft process. But the things that he has shown on the field, I don't know how he improves upon that. It speaks for itself at this point. The ability to handle a workload when he is healthy, both as the between the tackles runner, both as the receiver. There's similarities. One of the guys I think there's similarities to in the last draft was Devin Neal, was a guy, that I'm intimately familiar with that went to Kansas, my alma mater. But Devin Neal was a local kid that stayed home at Kansas, and he played really early, just like Darius did. Similar frame, similar athletic profile, similar fleshed out skill set, where you can both be the bell cow, again, when you're on the field, but then also you can handle a workload as a receiver. And Devin Neal ended up going in the 6th round to the Saints. I think Darius, I would peg it 5th or 6th round right now. But, to your point about the decision to come back to school, you're not going to improve your measurables if you're Darius. It just is what it is. You're going to have to rip off that Band-Aid during your pre-draft process and go and test, or duck it, but people are just going to assume that you have, the mediocre speed and high-end gear. That's that you're not going to improve that, and you can't really add anything to your resume. So to your point, Ross, I would probably do the same without knowing what the Gophers NIL ideas are, because if the Gophers can come to Darius with a financial package for next year that is more than, let's say, year one take home for a mid-5th round pick, that's where it becomes a business decision for Darius. This isn't a traditional jump to the pros decision like we've seen in the past. That might just come down to straight business for him. So it will be interesting to see, do the Gophers have they accessed that level of resources yet? But that one's going to be interesting.
Well, and Thor, as you've said for the last few weeks on this show, it's not always guaranteed. I'm putting in some of my own words here. It's not always guaranteed that money is going to equate to wins. But if you do want the product on the field to be better, well, then donate to your favorite collective and drink that NIL beer and NIL pizza when it's available. Thor, I am pulling rank on you, and I am naming the Thorfer, but only because I know you're going to love talking about this guy. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Max Brosmer, wow, I just butchered his name. Max Brosmer may not start on Sunday for the Minnesota Vikings. He probably will, but he may not. But he is at least getting first-team reps for your Minnesota Vikings with J.J. McCarthy injured again. I think this is Max Brosmer's second Thorfer, but it's the first time I've just unilaterally decided. Let's just remind everybody, if Max Brosmer starts on Sunday, I tend to think he will. If he does, what might people see from him on an NFL field? My caution would be, it might look better than J.J. McCarthy in the short term, but oh man, are you asking a guy to scale Mount Everest in your first NFL start at Seattle, home of the 12th man? It might be better, Thor, but I don't, in all honesty, for as much as I love Max, I don't know how much better it could be.
Yeah, I love Max too, and I'm excited to see him if he gets that opportunity. But to your point, it's a tough circumstance going into Seattle, tough place to play anyway. Really tough defense, and then we'll see about the circumstances of the offensive line. Right, the last game with the Vikings, after Darisaw was getting licked the whole time, he clearly wasn't 100% physically healthy. And then he gets pulled the end of the game for school, and then Donovan Jackson obviously got pulled out for his own injury. What's the left side of that offensive line look like and everything like that? But, without knowing that, assuming that Max Brosmer indeed plays on Sunday, I think the thing that we're looking for is quick decisions, right? That was the thing that JJ was struggling with. Some of the stuff I think with JJ was a bit overblown, but the criticism that I think was entirely valid is trying to get the timing better and for the game to slow down for JJ. The best thing about Brosmer's game is the ability to read the field really quickly. O'Connell has complimented that part of JJ's game pre-snap, but said as recently as this past week that it's post-snap where he needs to improve. Brosmer, at least, you go back, and it's preseason, right? So, you take it with a grain of salt, but you have to say Brosmer was crazy impressive this preseason. In all those games, the Titans won. He had a couple series against the starters, and his ability to go through the progressions really quick was the impressive thing, right? You start on the left side of the field. You would see him get to the third progression on the other side of the field really, really quick, get the ball out really quickly and put it on hands. That Brosmer is not as physically gifted as JJ or as Sam Darnold. There is a lot of guys that go in the first round, but the mental part of the game, processing the game, being a student of the game, and playing with timing are things that he excels with. And those are things that the offense has been lacking here in recent weeks. And you could really argue all season long, even when Carson Wentz was playing. So that's the thing we're hoping that Brosmer brings to the table. But you do have to give him the contextual, benefit of the doubt heading in. This is an undrafted free agent. The offensive line, it could be in a bad state again. We'll just have to wait on the statuses. And it's a very tough environment that you're playing in, but a big opportunity for Max Brosmer. And he's had some time here learning the offense. And he already looked like he had it down pretty pat as far as his understanding of it in the summer. So we'll see what happens on Sunday.
There you go. There is your Thor for Max Brosmer, who may or may not get the start on Sunday afternoon in Seattle. Go Gophers! One recruiting note for you, Thor. Again, I'm not saying that this was the reason why. I think there's logical reasons why. But Jet Walker, who originally had committed to West Virginia, then decommitted to Minnesota, only weeks later to decommit from Minnesota to go to the University of Texas. He is a consensus 3-star running back. We had him. We loved him. We barely knew him. Perhaps we didn't need him. Jet Walker decommitting from the University of Minnesota to go play for Texas. I'm just going to guess the financial package at the University of Texas, even for a consensus 3-star recruit, probably a little bit better than it is at Minnesota. And Thor, not to belabor it, therein lies a bit of the problem with where Gopher football and a lot of teams around college football are currently at. That might be an off-season pod for you and I examining the landscape of college football. Let's do this. Let's close out the show taking a quick look around the Big Ten. Well, I guess more specifically, college football. Happy rivalry weekend to you, by the way.
Yeah.
We get NFL on Thursday. We get college football on Friday, college football on Saturday. Just a small smattering of games for you, Thor. Number 2, Georgia against number 16, Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. That could be sneaky fun. Texas A&M at Texas in Austin. The game, Ohio State at Michigan. And very few times, if ever in our lifetime, Thor, could we talk about a game between Vanderbilt and Tennessee that has a little bit of meaning to it. Still some
a lot bit of meaning
to the college football playoff there, depending on who wins and other dominoes that fall. How about that? And that's just a smattering, Thor. I even love when you see things like Virginia and Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, the regional, the in-state rivalries. That stuff's fun. This week is often so much better than even Championship Saturday, which is now turned into Championship Friday and Saturday. So, first off, enjoy it, not just Thor, but everybody watching this pod, because obviously you like college football. But Thor, what did I get to or not get to that you are looking forward to this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, this is an awesome weekend. You look forward to it every year. But yeah, the football on tap for us this weekend. I can't wait. You were going through the college slate, which is insane enough. We get kicked off on Thursday with the NFL. You have Packers at Lions, awesome game. You have Chiefs at Cowboys, both those teams, it's must win. That's an awesome game. Then you have Burrow coming back for the Ravens for the Bengals at the Ravens. Another game both those teams need to win. Those are all awesome games. We even have a Friday night game, the Bears at the Eagles, which is an awesome game. And then we have the full slate of games on Friday in college football leading up to that, and then going into Saturday. So receptionist, cancel my meetings. I will be busy this weekend. We're going to be eating lots of food, drinking lots of stuff, and watching lots of football. As far as the college football games, near the end there of that buffet, the ones that I'm most looking forward to, A&M against Texas. Texas hosts A&M there, and Texas, you look at yourself as the big brother, and you always do the little brother thing to the Aggies, and for 20, 30, 40 years, that has been justified. This one's really fascinating. You have a top 3 team in A&M that is undefeated, but sort of for an SEC undefeated team at this point in the year, if you can say this, underrated, right? I mean, they fly a little bit under the rate in comparison to your Ohio States, even Indiana's. And now you go on the road in this game to Texas, a team whose season really just kind of ended, right? When you take your third loss, you're not going to make the playoffs at 9-3. So can Texas sort of defend their home turf here, and put a mark on Texas A&M on their regular season record here, become the first team to beat them, even when you're sort of reeling from the hopes and dreams of your season just having officially gone up in smoke, is going to be something that's fascinating to watch, especially with how well Texas's offense now is playing. Like Arch Manning starting to look like who we thought he was, which, fascinating thing to think about heading into next season too. And then the other ones, of course, the game, Ohio State and Michigan. Can Ohio State finally win? Ohio State hasn't beaten them since before J.J. McCarthy enrolled at Michigan. You're going back 5 years now. So that one's going to be pretty fascinating. The line on that game, Ohio State -9.5, even though it's in Ann Arbor, there's the expectation that Ohio State's going to let out the frustration and just blast them. That's what everyone thought last year too. So I can't wait to watch that one. And then Ross, the last one under the radar that I can't wait to watch is on Saturday afternoon. Oregon 10-1 travels to Washington. That one is the ambush alert. It's a trap alert. Washington is a very, very difficult place to play. And if Oregon is looking ahead to the Big Ten title game, you might get ambushed in that one. Washington, like I said, very, very difficult place to play. And Washington has NFL caliber guys all over their offense. And they have a couple NFL caliber cornerbacks as well, in Takario Davis and Ephesians Prisak. Both those guys are 6'3" or taller. So it's like the sort of pterodactyl, outside corners, like sort of former Seahawks style brand defense. That's going to be a fascinating one to watch. But I like Washington to keep that one close and potentially even pull the stunner.
Thor, next week when we talk, you and I are going to spend, I think, a good amount of time talking about some of these coaching openings. We might even know where a few guys are going. We're going to know of a few more guys who lost their job. I also think, because it happens almost every year, there could be something big that we don't even know about right now, like maybe Dabo Swinney with an exit plan to a different university and a pretty good job. Mike Norvell, he has survived 2 years in a row. Allegedly, Mike Norvell is back next year at Florida State. So I don't think we'll be talking about him unless he finagles his way out to a different job. So we'll put a pin in that. Next week, we'll spend a lot more time maybe diving more into the Gopher Bowl projections, taking a look at the college football coaching landscape, and we can even preview Championship Friday and Saturday. Sound like a good idea to you?
Sounds like a good idea, unless the Gophers get upset, in which case I'm hurting against PJ Fleck. So we're going to have to open the hour for that. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully the Gophers just take the belt to the Badgers like they should here.
Great. And if the Gophers lose, we just won't do a show next. No, I'm just kidding. We'll do one. That is Thor Nystrom. I'm Ross Brendel, and you've been listening and watching Gophers 101.